And welcome back, everyone, to episode 24 of the Sports Coverage Podcast. My name is Andrew, and I'm alongside my co host, Vince. The wild card round of the NFL playoffs is over, and we are now in the divisional round. So there's a ton of good games to talk about there and recap last week's wild card games. Middle of the NBA season, ton to talk about there. And of course, we have the MLB free agency, which we've been talking about a lot last couple weeks. We have our fast facts, as always, and we have a little bit of soccer to talk about with you this week. So we're going to hop right into it with the NFL as usual. And we have some more coaching news after we talked a lot about it last week. But as we both suspected and others did, fan favorite Raiders interim coach Antonio Pierce has been hired to be their full-time coach, much to the delight of fans and players who all kind of fell in love with him as their coach. So Vince, do you think this is the right decision for the Raiders, or should they have hold out a little bit longer to try to get a different guy?
No, I honestly think this is a great move. And you take a look at what he did, just this past season. He did good things for this organization that, you don't really see from an interim head coach. Obviously they didn't go on to make it to the playoffs, but that's not something we expected from a Raiders team that looked very, very shaky at one point. And with this franchise, just a couple of years ago they moved to Las Vegas. They haven't looked good since. They've been in Oakland, and losing their car was obviously a big loss. So no, I really do like this pickup because he has the fire. I feel like Antonio Pierce is the type of guy to just he deserves everything, and he's a very good, very like I didn't realize until now he's a very trained coach. Like he obviously played in the NFL. He
Yeah.
played with the Giants, and I honestly would have I prefer that the Raiders did this than go out there and get any other guy like Nick Saban or Jim Harbaugh because
Well, Nick Saban's a little.
no, but look, because he has experience, and when you have experience from a guy that the players like, the fans like, it's gonna go good for your team in the long run. So you just gotta think about things like the small things like that to help your team succeed.
Yeah. And there were players who were saying that they want to request trades if he didn't come back because just the end of the season there was that push to the playoffs, which unfortunately didn't end up happening. But that kind of proved that Antonio Pierce needed to be the guy in Las Vegas. So I think this is a great move for the Raiders, like you said. And I'm happy to see what the Antonio Pierce era brings to Las Vegas. So good luck to them. Cliff Kingsbury is looking to be the next offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears. And the big question is, if this happens, are they going to give up on Justin Fields and maybe have Cliff wants to pivot to someone like Caleb Williams or a guy very high in the draft? So, and the Bears might be looking to trade their picks. There's a lot of discussion about what's going on with that number one pick there. So, what do you think? If first of all, do you think the Bears want Cliff Kingsbury? And second of all, do you think that will cause the Bears to draft a new quarterback?
I think they want Cliff Kingsbury, and when it comes to like a guy like Caleb Williams, Cliff coached, he coached Caleb throughout his his college career. He's been running his offense for so many years now. So when you think about that, it goes together perfectly. He's the number one prospect in this draft, and to be offensive coordinator in the NFL and staying with the same type of guy, with a player that, especially a quarterback that you coach throughout his college career, it can go a long way. And I think, it can benefit both of these people, both of just both of them because, you know, where would Caleb Williams end up? He can stick with the same exact offense he had, back in college and, have a good system and be ran well, or he can end up being like Bryce Young, getting drafted to a really, really bad team. And I think the Bears have enough to support Caleb Williams, and I think they will pursue Cliff Kingsbury. I think they will pursue Caleb if Cliff Kingsbury does get hired. But what are you going to do with Justin Fields? And I think it comes to draft day. Will they do something with when it comes to draft day? And I think they will trade him away. Obviously the Vikings would be a really good move since they're moving away, possibly from Kirk Cousins. But you obviously don't want to trade into someone with your division. So that's kind of the hard thing. You got to realize at one point you don't want to trade, your person to a person in your division. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think that the fans might have an issue with that because that last game kind of proved that fans wanted Justin Fields to keep being their franchise quarterback and keep proving himself. But the Bears have been in a tough spot for a couple of years now. So I think that this is going to be another tight decision that may have repercussions with fans, with coaching. And I think that it might be controversial to draft Caleb Williams at this point, but we'll see if Cliff Kingsbury does get hired by the Bears. I think that there's definitely a chance that there could be some issues going on in Chicago after that. So we'll definitely see. But the wild card round of the playoffs is over, and we saw a couple upsets, which I guess we may have seen coming at least for a couple of them, but then others were kind of very straightforward. So we're going to start off with the one that I'm not going to say that this is the one I most enjoyed watching because there was one I liked a little bit more, but the Bucks versus the Eagles, and the Bucks had a dominating game against the Eagles, who have been falling apart ever since the last couple weeks of the season, with a huge win, and they moved on to this week's divisional round. But we'll talk about their game in a little bit. And we saw players only meeting from the Eagles a couple weeks ago, which shows that it was not going well in Philly. And then you have Nick Sirianni, who kind of fell off the face of the planet as a head coach and was just kind of doing whatever he wanted out there. Jalen Hurts was playing without a middle finger. You have A.J. Brown out for the game and all these other guys who were just not playing to their full potential. Vince, what were your reactions to this game? Because I know mine were very, very fun.
Well, I definitely saw this coming. I feel like, I mean, when you take a look at what this Eagles team dealt with in week 18 was really, really bad. I mean, they lost a guy like AJ Brown from your offense, who is the number one X factor for your team. And with stuff like that, it comes with losses when you don't have your best player out there on offense. And even with, more guys getting hurt, like Blake and Ship, the safety, got hurt. Jalen Hurts, obviously his middle finger injury, he's played through that injury. You know, even though they lost, it was a bright moment for them. I mean, there's more to come for this team in the future. They obviously are just coming off a Super Bowl loss, which was obviously tough for them, but they can get back on track. And sadly for them, they had to deal with I guess we could say this as his nickname now, Baker Mayfield, the wild card king. I mean, he balled
Yep.
out. Look, I know things didn't go his way this weekend, but he showed that he could be a starter in the National Football League, and that's what I think I like the most of with him. He was really good in college. Don't forget that he
Yeah.
was one of the best players ever to come out of college football, and he still is, I think, one of the best quarterbacks in the world right now. And even if he's not playing for a contender, the Bucks had a great season.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield is playing lights out. Even if his life depended on it, he's an amazing player. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Even though
definitely.
he
And
had
he
some
proved it.
hardships. No, especially he proved it this postseason, and he had some hardships coming into the league, but he just looked phenomenal. And again, the Eagles lost. I think they can get back on track next year. Hopefully not. I mean, I hope not, but we
Yeah.
have to see from here on out. But
Yeah.
again, losing someone like a guy like you're about to mention, it's
Yeah.
kind of painful.
So I think that as a Giants fan, I still respect this man's career, even though he played against us uh, my entire life. Jason Kelsey is retiring from football following the Eagles' painful playoff exit. And, he is going to go down in history as one of the best offensive linemen ever to play the game of football. And he was the guy in Philly. Like, you have the superstar players on your offense, like Jalen Hurts, uh, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, all those guys. But then you have Jason Kelsey always at the center of it, leading this team when the coaches couldn't. So this guy is definitely going to be missed in the city of Philadelphia, but also in the sport of football, because you have things like him and his brother's podcast. You've the as they call her, Mama Kelsey, wearing the split jerseys and stuff like that. Like, he is a big part of what football has been the last couple of years, along with his brother. So I think that everyone in football, regardless of how much he beat you up over the last 10 years or however long he was playing, I think should say should wish Jason Kelsey well in his retirement because I think that he definitely deserves this, but didn't go deserve to go out the way he did.
I mean, look, Jason Kelsey is possibly one of the most respected, not just centers in the sport, but players in the sport. You know, his energy when it comes to football is just great, and I think players want to be around a guy like that. Jalen Hurts, obviously. He kneels down to get his snaps. There's certain play styles, and everyone loves a guy like Jason Kelsey in their locker room. And I think that's what the Eagles really take a look at and enjoy from him throughout his career with the Eagles. He obviously got drafted by the franchise, stuck around with them until they won a Super Bowl. He obviously experienced a couple Super Bowls with them, lost one, won one, but he had a great career. And the fact that him and his brother got to win Super Bowls as players in the National Football League is a great moment for both of them. They got to play in one together, and I think those are the special moments that as a mom, as a parent, that's what the Kelsey family love to watch. I think that last year was a great moment for the family, the Kelsey family for sure, and I think there's more to come from not just Travis but Jason for sure because
Oh, definitely.
the National Football League likes to use people, for example, like Taylor Swift, Tommy DeVito, stuff like that, as headlines and stuff. And I think Jason will be still a big part of this league for years to come. But it just matters, it just has to be not in the playing way, but in more of like the social media way.
Oh, definitely. And I think that just when you think of Jason Kelsey, like you said, he is one of the most respected players in football. You think of him dressing up at the championship parade when they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that.
You think of him just this week giving a signed jersey to his favorite McDonald's drive-through worker. You think of his podcast kind of leading the way for sports podcasts by
and
players.
even this but after he won his first Super Bowl against in Minnesota against the Patriots, his speech at the end, which honestly I think like many people should be realizing a little more, acknowledging a little more. It was very very emotional for him. Like he loved the game of football, and he you could tell how much the passion, how much love he has for the sport, and how happy he was to to finally deserve and get a ring. I mean, it's moments like that that you have to cherish from a guy that is so respected and loved throughout the sport.
But also think of how many teams would have their center giving like the post game speech and being the one to hold that trophy. Like he
Oh,
is the
exactly.
most
Like
important player to that
no,
team.
yeah, he is Eagles football. When you think about Eagles football, you don't think about guys like Dante Culpepper. You think about guys like Jason Kelsey because he is the greatest. I don't care if people disagree with me or not. He is arguably one of the best players in the franchise history.
Oh, definitely. I 100% agree with that. And, we don't have his stats pulled up right now, but just beyond the stats, like we keep saying, on and off the field, Jason Kelsey will forever go down in football history. And hopefully he'll be joining an elite list of all time football players soon. But, and just one more moment that I feel like everyone's going to remember of Jason Kelsey is him today showing up to the Bills tailgate to have fun with Bills fans ahead of his brother's game against the Bills. So that's always something fun to talk about. But we kind of spoiled the next game we're going to talk about from wildcard weekend. Steelers versus Bills ended up being a 31-17 win for Buffalo. And it got tight towards the end, but I think that the Bills we always knew that they were just going to push out towards the end. And I don't know if there's a ton to talk about this game, but was there anything you noticed?
Well, I mean, when you don't have your best defender in TJ Watt, it's gonna be hard for you. Trust me, you're gonna have to learn out the hard way. You're gonna have to learn the hard way out. And Josh Allen proved that he is still one of the best quarterbacks, still one of the best players in this league. And again, I like the Bills a lot. I think that they were obviously the favorites in this game. Maybe it would have been a different story if they would have lost against the Dolphins week 18. They would be playing the Dolphins last week, actually, and it would be completely different stories. They had to play in the freezing cold, obviously. As we talked about in the Fast Fact, people were getting paid to shovel snow out of the stadium, which
Yeah.
I can't relate to. I think you can relate to more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
It's
got I
different
got the
here.
I got the sunny beaches out here in Miami. So, but yeah, again, yeah, the Bills deserve this. Even coming from a Miami Dolphins fan, the Bills really look good in the game I went to watch, and they are a well ran team, well coordinated team, and with guys like James Cook running your offense, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, there's many more you can say. That's why you win games, because of guys like that show up big in big moments.
Yeah. And I feel like you're talking about all those guys on offense, but there's one more guy that I think has been a game changer towards the middle of the season. They had their tight end Knox go down mid-season, and uh, the guy who replaced him became one of my fantasy MVPs this year, Kincaid, who is still who is still out there for half the snaps on offense, and he has shown that he can be an NFL tight end. So it was a great rookie campaign for him, and I think that he
Oh,
is someone that's helping lead the Bills out there. The next game, my favorite to watch, and I think many others in this great country, which is supposed to be all Cowboys fans. But, I don't know if they're going to be America's team anymore because the Packers are starting to take over as they beat them 48-32. And let's just say Love was in the air for that game. Jordan Love just dominated first half of the game, and he kind of handed it off from there, and that was that. And Cowboys fans will say, we could have come back in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. We were still in it. They were not still in it. The Packers were always going to win this game as soon as they went up like 2 scores or whatever in the first. So great game. Very happy with
yeah.
that.
Look, I will say something. When the Packers went up by 20, I already knew this game was over. I mean, Jordan Love played. He balled out. He played. He played quarterback the way you're supposed to play quarterback, and that's what teams like to see from a guy like Jordan Love. I mean, he's taking over a really big roster spot. I mean, Aaron Rodgers played for your franchise for you know years, like decades. So it's nice to see a quarterback come into his place and obviously win. Against a very historic franchise that is very controversial and that has a lot to do with them. So I'm very happy that the Cowboys ended up losing, but the Cowboys, I don't know what we're gonna do going forward. I mean, there's been talks
Yeah.
about they're not gonna end up firing McCarthy, which I don't agree with at all. I don't think he deserves to have the head coaching job, deserves to be calling the plays for this offense, because the way he is as a coach is not well. Like, he is not gonna fit in with this team at all for the future to come. So I just think there's that many different things that they got to focus on going in the future. But this is definitely a very exciting win for this Packers franchise.
Yeah, and I think someone else that they still need to reevaluate, especially in the playoffs, because you're looking at Dak Prescott, who had one of the best seasons of his entire career, still ended up throwing 3 touchdowns in this game, but most of those were garbage time points. He still threw 2 major interceptions even after throwing for 403 yards. And you have to reevaluate, can this guy play in these pressure situations? And I think it would have been fun to see like them kind of take a different step at the end of that game and try something else out, because Cowboys fans knew that they probably wouldn't come back, even though they still felt like they had hope. But I think the Packers definitely just ran away with this game, and the Cowboys need to reevaluate some things going into next season. And I think you're right, McCarthy does not deserve to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. They need to find
Sure.
someone else, and there's plenty of good options for them to find.
Yeah.
Um, the next game, which was the most probably exciting game, came down to the wire. The Lions versus the Rams, and that went the Lions away for the first time in a lot of years. The Lions beat the Rams 24-23 to win a playoff game, and this is like the feel good game of last week. And the Lions, you have all the stars coming out to that game. Eminem was there. You have Jared Goff having a game of his career. Amon Ra playing how he did all this season. And it was just an amazing game. And I think that Lions also definitely deserve this one, like many of the other teams who won last week. So, and the Lions proved it again this week, but we'll talk about that in a sec. So, anything you want to say about this one?
I mean, I think you got to understand something. You got to feel for Matthew Stafford. He came back to his home, his where he got
It was
drafted.
rough. Yeah.
It was really painful to watch. I mean, he was getting booed by his former fans, and by his former franchise, and that's something where it's like, that it's personal. Like his wife was there, his kids are there. They grew up in the city, so it's painful to watch. But again, it's football. They don't care if you. It doesn't matter if you're Tom Brady coming back to the Patriots. A team is still going to hate you for leaving. Betraying them. So stuff happens, and I feel like this was honestly a revenge game for Jared Goff.
Oh,
Like I
definitely.
know,
Yeah.
no, like he got traded kind of out of nowhere. I feel like it was a blockbuster trade. It's probably one of the best trades to happen in this I'd say past decade because without this trade, what if the Rams did not end up winning the Super Bowl in 2021? I mean, many things could have happened, and the fact that they ended up doing it with a guy like Stafford, who has no playoff experience whatsoever. So that's what I
Yeah.
think you take a look at, and the Rams have already succeeded. They have already accomplished what they need to accomplish throughout this trade. But will the Lions be able to accomplish what they can accomplish throughout this trade? They traded, away Jared Goff. The Rams traded away Jared Goff to a very shaky Lions team at the time, and now they are the team that is better than the Rams, who were just winning Super Bowls a couple of years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. You definitely do have to feel for Matt Stafford, but more for Jared Goff because he was traded away because they think that he wasn't going to be the future of their franchise. And now you have to look at him leading this franchise to, and we'll talk about in a second, the NFC Championship. So Jared Goff, I think, is the guy to watch and the guy to really feel for besides the fans that they showed or that one fan that has had season tickets for like 60 years or something, which
Oh,
is
that's insane.
crazy. So, you've got to feel for all these guys, and I'm just kind of proud of the Lions, I guess. But the divisional round started yesterday, actually, with two games. One was pretty close, one was not, unfortunately. But the Packers almost had an upset win versus the 49ers, who looked absolutely fake last night, but the 49ers were able to come back and get a really clutch interception at the end of the game. So the Packers lost to the 49ers 21-24, and we all had hope for a couple minutes there going into the fourth quarter. Didn't Nothing ended up happening, and I think Love did not look nearly as good as he did last week.
Yeah, I totally agree. That throw that he made that ended up costing them the game was not good at all. It just really wasn't a good throw at all. And I think if he had other opportunities, he had more time on the clock, and I feel like if he would have thrown the ball maybe just out of bounds, it would have been a better outcome for this Packers team. But again, they had a chance at a field goal earlier in the game, and they completely missed it.
Oh yeah,
Daniel Carlson really did ruin this team's hopes from NFC Championship promise, and he threw it all away just because of one kick, and that's why points matter in this sport because without points, you can end up losing easily.
exactly. Yeah, and that wasn't necessarily the same for the Ravens versus the Texans. And this one, you got to feel for CJ Stroud, but also Lamar, who had his kind of comeback game in the playoffs. They won 34-10 versus the Texans. So this makes the Browns look even more cheap, unfortunately. But, the Ravens versus Browns game earlier in the year where Browns hit a walk-off field goal was definitely big. So this was crazy to kind of see how this chain of events leads to the Texans getting absolutely blown out with CJ Stroud leading his rookie campaign. So anything in this game you noticed?
All I'm gonna say is, go Ravens, baby. I'm rooting for them the rest of the way. I think that they will win the Super Bowl. I said this from the start. In the start of the postseason, they just look phenomenal. Lamar Jackson looks like an MVP caliber player. I think it's kind of obvious that he will win and probably go down as another unanimous MVP award. I mean, there's many MVPs you could take a look at here, but when it comes to promising, Dak Prescott's not one of those guys. Brock Purdy's a system quarterback. That's not going to happen. And you take a look at Lamar Jackson. He is the best quarterback in the league. He is the best player in the league, and I think he deserves this award by far.
Oh, definitely. And I feel like the script was kind of leaked. We talked about the logo theory a couple weeks ago,
Ah,
but there's been even more uh, stuff coming out about the quote unquote NFL script, which It's a little weird, but there's definitely something going on there. But Ravens, the strongest team in football right now, and the 49ers looked fake after their game. But today was the Lions versus the Bucks earlier today, and the Lions had another statement game, beating the Bucks 31-23 to move on to that NFC Championship. Again, Lions fans very happy for them, and yeah, it was a great game. Did you see anything, Vince?
Um, Honestly, I really did like the outcome from this game. I think everyone kind of realized what was going to happen from both these teams when they were playing each other. I mean, the Lions just looked more dominant, and I think that's the problem. The Bucks, Baker Mayfield had his moments, and I know I was kind of glazing him earlier in this episode, but Baker Mayfield's a really good quarterback, and I still think he can be a good quarterback in this league, but when it comes to big games, getting advanced to an NFC Championship or championship game, you need to win in big moments like this. And I feel like for Jared Goff, he understands what to do because he did this once, he did this once with the Rams back in around 2019, 2020. So or 2018, 2019. So he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly the position he's in. So I think, the Lions have a shot. But again, the logo theory, I don't want to bring it up again, but I think it could be a Ravens 49ers Super Bowl, though. Just depends.
I definitely think that there is going to be, but hopefully the Lions can put an end to the
I would
49.
I would
Honestly,
love
I
to see
think the
the Lions.
49ers are suffering right now. It hasn't looked good.
Yeah.
Um, and currently the ongoing game is the Chiefs versus the Bills, and it is the third quarter, and currently it's second and goal for the Bills, and they're down 2017. This game is going to be tight. We'll see what's happening by the end of the episode, but we'll keep you updated on that. Moving on to the NBA, a potential NBA final scenario game went down the other day with the Celtics versus the Nuggets, and the Nuggets walked away with it 102-100. It was a very tight game, but do you think, Vince, that this is still a legitimate NBA Finals matchup?
For sure. But the only problem is I don't think the Nuggets will be back. And I know people were saying after the finals, well, they can repeat. It's obviously a possibility that can happen. But again, they were playing a team like the Miami Heat. And look, I'm not hating on my own team, but when it comes to playing an 8 seed, it looks like you can win. It's not that going to be that hard for you. And to be honest, I think the Nuggets got easy. They had a really easy postseason. I'm not gonna lie, they had a really easy run to the finals. Had an easy, win in the finals. So, um, do I think that either of these teams will make it to the playoffs? For sure. I think the Celtics can make it. I think they're still one of the most dominant teams in the East for sure, without a doubt. But the Nuggets not so. I don't think so at all.
Yeah, I think the Nuggets they still look like a strong team, but you're right. I think that's gonna kind of come down to how a lot of these teams in the West finish out the rest of the season. Celtics, though, I think are still the strongest. But we'll see if the Knicks get in their way, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. And
No, just
they're still
stop.
looking strong. They're still looking strong, but you know.
Jesus Christ.
But speaking of the East, we have makers or fakers, the Miami Heat. We were gonna do this one a couple weeks ago, but we didn't get to it. And since then, the Heat have looked interesting to say the least. So you are a little bit biased on this one, and I think I know what you're gonna say. But makers or fakers, Heat.
Oh, obviously makers. Come on, this is not even a question. Look, Tyler Hero will be in this year's postseason without a doubt, and I think that's one of the main issues that the Heat had last year, suffering from a huge loss to their offensive, system. They lost a guy who, is their main 3-point shooter. When you lose a guy like that, it's hard, it's difficult, especially in the first round of the playoffs. So, you know, um, no, this Heat team looks really, really good. I don't know. I don't mean to be biased or anything, but the rookie Jaime Jaquez, we haven't really talked about him much. We haven't talked about the rookie of the year race, but he is looking phenomenal. He is just coming off a rookie of the year month award, and he's just looking like one of the best rookies in the league right now. He looks like he's already been in the league for so long now. So I think that this Heat team can definitely make the playoffs for sure. So give me makers.
All right. Um, I think I'm gonna go with makers too, just because of where they are right now. But I want to point out that this week, they lost to the Magic 105-87, lost to the Hawks by one, and then lost to the Raptors by a ton. Almost lost to the Nets. and then before that had some pretty good games. So I think that they've been up and down because there were points as well. Losses to the Jazz, big loss to the Clippers, big loss to the Suns. So I feel like they're staying at a pretty average rate, but there's times when they're gonna definitely go up and down in the standings and stuff like that. But I think that they're makers because they're just more consistent than other teams. But I don't know if they'll end up going far in the postseason or having another magic run like last year.
Yeah.
But speaking of the Heat, Udonis Haslem, longtime Miami Heat, has officially had his jersey retired by the organization after 1 year after his departure. So good for him. And I know that you'll definitely say that he is a Miami Heat legend. So
Oh,
good for
there's
him.
no doubt. Even if he was staying on the bench for so long, I will say in his last game against the Orlando Magic, he balled out in the regular season. He had like 20 points, something points, 30 something points in that game. And he just looked phenomenal. So I'm really happy that he got his jersey retired. He deserves it,
Yeah, and he joins definitely an elite group of guys that have their Miami Heat jerseys retired. So
including
uh,
Dan Marino and Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan.
yeah.
We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah. um, so a trade that we kind of missed talking about last week, but did happen. Pascal Siakam has been traded to the Pacers, and so far it's looked pretty good. He's been having a pretty good season. So I think that the Raptors have been making moves, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out for both teams because the Pacers have looked better than normal, but it might be interesting to see how they end up doing. What do you think about this trade?
I really did like this, but I think that the Raptors will win this trade. I think at the end of the day, they've looked like the better team since the trade happened. So I just think the Raptors are going to benefit from it the
Yeah.
most.
Yeah, and speaking of like the Raptors and this trade and stuff, like I think that the Raptors have looked pretty good. I think that the RJ Barrett, like the Knicks trade that they had a couple weeks ago, has been working out because they've been looking pretty good. And as some of my friends that are Knicks fans have said, they're getting the full RJ Barrett experience already. So it's I think that the Raptors are gonna look good with this.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. We have an injury, so Tyrese Halliburton has suffered a left hamstring strain and will remain sidelined until future notice. Moving on to the MLB, some free agency news real quick. The Astros signed Josh Hader to a 5-year contract, and that is kind of the big last relief pitcher that is out there and could be signed. Like big guys, we're talking about guys that are going to get huge contracts. So it's good to see that Josh Hader finally did get signed. Don't like where he went though. So, um, some more news in the Athletics saga. They're trying to get out of Oakland as fast as possible and are in talks to temporarily move to Salt Lake City until their Las Vegas home is built in 2028. And they've been pitched to play in the AAA in the stadium, which is the AAA affiliate for the Angels in Salt Lake City, or a new stadium will be built in Salt Lake City by 2025, where they'll spend 2 years there before moving to Las Vegas. So we could see the Athletics out of the Oakland Coliseum as soon as this year, which
Finally.
this situation just keeps getting crazier and crazier, but still I don't think the fans of Oakland deserve this. And we talked
uh,
about an independent team that is getting built there, the Oakland Ballers, which was founded by fans. The Athletics blocked them from being able to play in the Oakland Coliseum. So even if they're not going to end up playing there this season, which is just wild and shows how much they just do not care about what's going on. It's all for the money. You got to have that exclusivity when you're playing in the Oakland Coliseum, guys.
uh, maybe
um,
they can renovate. Maybe they can renovate one day.
yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen. It used to be an interesting place to go watch a game, but now it's just kind of a pain, if I'm being honest. But you know, and I'll always remember it was against the Yankees when they discovered the possum cages in the press box
Oh
to
yes.
catch the possums. That was on the Yankees broadcast, and Michael K's reaction to that I will always remember. So, it's stories like that that the Oakland Coliseum will always be remembered by. Um, so Ronald Acuna Jr. is working to become a switch hitter, which, by the way, is deadly and unfair and should not happen. And was shown taking lefty swings, and there were videos of him hitting absolute bombs from his left side. So it might be fun to see him batting lefty coming up this season. In international soccer, Real Madrid beats up on Barcelona in the Spanish Supercopa after a hat trick from Vinicius Jr. And that was a crazy game to see. And interestingly enough, it was played in Saudi Arabia instead, even though it's called the Spanish. Even though it's a Spanish league, so it's interesting to see. And currently, Mohamed Salah of Liverpool is playing in Africa right now for his home nation of Egypt, but ended up leaving a game earlier this week after suffering a hamstring strain and is kind of week to week on when he'll be back, but he is coming back to rehab with Liverpool, so that could be a big hit to the Premier League leaders. Moving on to the fast facts, something close to home to you. Miami tight end Cam McCormick is being given a ninth year to play in college football, and we'll count along here together. So he had 4 seasons of major injury. He was redshirted, and then COVID said 6 years, and then an additional 3 years when he actually played. So that is going to be 9 years of college football for Cam McCormick, and that's terrible, and this should never happen again. That's
I would like to see his 10th year. I'm pretty
I,
excited. I'm kind of happy that we get the publicity of it. We get the
yeah,
we get all the the news of it because Miami. We are a very difficult team. Uh, you know, Cristobal is a very difficult coach, but I like the news that we're getting, all the attention we're getting, and we deserve it. So yeah,
yeah,
but good for him. I love college football, and honestly, if I was him, I would love to be in his position.
yeah. You know, it's it's definitely it's I don't like it. I'll just say that I don't really like
Well,
it, and we'll see what happens. I think that he's not going to come back for a 10th year because people would go even more crazy than right now. But it's kind of just an interesting situation that we should cover. In women's basketball and kind of in a big thing for NCAA hoops in general, Stanford head coach Tara Vanderveer becomes the winningest head coach in NCAA basketball history after her 1,203rd win uh, with Stanford this Sunday. But that's pretty much going to do it for this week's episode of the Sports Coverage Podcast. As always, we will have clips going out on Instagram and announcement posts for when all of our episodes are posted, audio only on Spotify. And of course, you're probably watching this video right here on YouTube. So thank you everyone so much for listening. My name is Andrew and I'm alongside my co-host Vince, and we will see you next week.